So God is in the universe. The universe being all that there is, of course, the totality of all that there is in the cosmos, in this incredibly huge and infinitely large universe, is all that there is. So God must exist within that. He is an agent, a cause within the universe. This would follow. And so you get Bill Nile's incomprehension that God exists in space-time. So, hey, science can explain, I don't know, the sunrise better than God. So why do we need God? And then he goes on to ask, well, if God doesn't exist, how would you live your life? What would you choose to do? Not realizing the absurdity of the question, because on the correct traditional understanding, the understanding shared by Islam, Christianity prior to Scotus, and Orthodox Judaism, we wouldn't be here if God didn't exist. The question is meaningless. God is the cause of all being. He is the cause of all contingent being. Everything that comes into existence must have a cause, and that cause ultimately must be God. It can't be prior causes within the universe, because then you would have an infinite regress, and infinite regresses are absurd. They are logically, you never get the thing going in the first place. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I know it's a bit complicated, and it's a nice bit of theology and philosophy there. This book is mainly to do with the unintended Reformation. The Reformation took place a bit later, of course, with Martin Luther in 1517, starting the whole thing off, and then others like Zwingli and John Calvin, etc., etc. And they changed the world forever, and we're still living with the consequences, the unintended consequences of the secularization of the world, which they brought about. But the Scottish point is that in the domestication of God, we have ultimately people like Bill Nye not understanding even what the Bible says. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He created everything in the beginning. He's not in space-time. He is beyond, behind. He's not like us. He is completely different from us. This is what the Quran says. He's nothing like, there's nothing like unto him, as it says in one of the surahs. And so Bill Nye's failure to understand this basic maxim of theology leads him to absurdities, as if God is a competitor explanation within the universe. God brings the universe into being, actually. He sustains it every moment. Everything within it only exists by his creative power. He's not a competitor. It's not a competitor in the explanatory causation of things. Everything happens because of him and by him, and we would not exist. And then for Bill Nye, then towards the end of his very short TikTok video, talking about how to live a good life without God is, of course, another absurdity. Where does he get notions of goodness from? If God doesn't exist, everything is possible, as Dostoevsky said, and everything is meaningless. There is no good and evil, right and wrong. In a universe without purpose, without creation, without teleology, without a transcendent cause and foundation to it, there is no meaning, obviously, and therefore he cannot talk about being good. What he's doing is he's relying on partly on the fitra, this innate sense, God-given sense, but also on inherited Christian tradition in the United States, which is still there in some parts of America, stronger, more strongly or less strongly, depending on the area, which has kind of become secularized, but it's still there on just underneath the surface, informing morality. And he is parasitically feeding off that and saying, yeah, I can be an atheist. Yeah, I know I can be good, while not realizing that there is no metaphysical basis for his goodness. He's relying on religion, really, although he might not want to acknowledge that. And as that religious capital gets spent and used up and progressively disappears, as it is in the West, it will be even more difficult for him to even use this language, because there is no goodness in a universe without meaning and purpose in a creator, as all people who acknowledge God will understand. So there we go. That's my rant about John Duns Scotus. Hope that makes sense to you. Do get the book. It is written by a Christian. A lot of it is to do with Christian theology and doctrines. It's about the Reformation, after all, and the Catholic Church. But an awful lot of it is very of interest to Muslims and others, I think, because he really hits on a good point. Why do we live in a secular world? It's largely because of the Reformation and the unintended byproduct of that, the effect it had on everyone in Europe. I'm not going to go into it now. Different video, different time, but it's a very compelling argument, and I really think it's helpful for the rest of the world to understand why we're now under this Western obsession with secularism. We see it in France, we see it in America and in Germany and so on. Why must the rest of the world follow Europe in their obsession with excluding God from the public realm? And understanding why we don't and what went wrong in Europe, this book is very helpful, I think. Anyway, until next time.